She hadn't seen him in years. The mountains had swallowed his scent. The silence had erased his voice. Yet every winter, her body remembered the way he moved, the weight of him pressed against her in sleep. The echo of his first breath still lived beneath. Her ribs she had searched until the wind no longer spoke to her, until even the stars looked away. And when she stopped looking, the pain didn't leave it settled deeper, became part of her bones. And then one day, in the frozen hush of dusk, something shifted, a sound too familiar to forget, a pull in her chest, like breath after drowning, and without knowing why her legs moved. Her heart broke open, and she ran not toward hope, but toward the ache that never truly left, because something was calling her back, something lost, something alive. She moved through the snow as she always had, silent, precise, a breath in the vast white. Nothing, her paws pressing into the powder, then gone like she was never there to the world. She was whole, a solitary predator in her prime, vanishing into wind and stone. But every morning before the hunt, she paused at the same ledge, a place where the sun touched just enough to melt a memory into the ice. Her ears flicked at sounds that weren't there. Her head turned to empty space, as if expecting a second shadow beside her gate. A smaller echo that no longer followed, and sometimes at night, when the cold settled heavy on her fur, she curled tighter than she needed to, pressing against a warmth that wasn't there anymore. She still hunted, still climbed, still breathed, but inside, beneath instinct and silence, something throbbed quiet and constant. Not enough to break her, only enough to remind her that once she had not been alone, and that loss in the mountains is not loud, it is slow and soft and patient, like snow that never melts. It was only a step, just one step in soft snow, and then the mountains screamed. The snap of metal tore through the silence, and everything, after that, moved too fast, and not at all. He cried out once, a sound she had never heard from him. Not like that, and by the time she turned, he was already on the ground, writhing, paw caught blood staining white. She lunged, but there was no enemy to fight, no teeth to bear, just a cruel thing left by hands that did not belong here. She stayed not out of choice, but because something inside her broke something that refused to leave him. She pressed against him, trying to share warmth, trying to stop the shaking, her eyes wide and wild, searching the cold for a reason. And when none came, she lay there, breath-shallow ears, flicking to every sound that wasn't help. The cub whimpered, then went quiet, and the quiet was worse. She stopped eating, stopped moving, except to circle him again and again, a ritual of helplessness. Days passed, or maybe more time bled into snow. She no longer hunted, no longer slept, only waited, as if waiting could change fate. Her body thinned, her ribs showed, but she wouldn't go. Even when his eyes dulled, even when his breathing slowed, and somewhere, in that waiting, the world narrowed. She forgot how to run, how to listen, how to be anything but broken beside him. And when they took him, when men came and light returned and the trap was pried open, she did not fight, she did not flee, she just watched, hollow and shaking as her world was carried away after that something in her stayed closed. She moved through snow, but without rhythm, without purpose, a shadow of herself pressed thin against the cold days, turned to weeks, turned to silence, and in that silence, she lived not like a hunter, but like a ghost, with memory for blood and sorrow for breath. Let me pause for just a moment and ask you something. Where are you listening from right now? Have you ever had someone, a person, or maybe even an animal, remember you after many years apart? That quiet recognition, that sudden rush of something you thought was lost. If stories like this speak to something deep in you, don't forget to follow. There's so much more ahead, and it only gets more heartfelt from here. It started with a sound she hadn't heard in seasons, not from the mountain, but from memory. A click, a rustle, a scent, too sharp, too strange. And suddenly, it was all there again. The snow, the blood, his cry, the trap, and her breath caught like it had that day, and for a moment the world tilted. She smelled him, she heard him, she felt him, not in the past, but now something inside her twisted, Something long buried surged up like thawing ice. The choice was not clear, was never easy. Should she move toward it? Should she follow this thread, this ache, this impossible pull? What if it was nothing? What if it was too late? What if he had already forgotten her, grown beyond her, healed into someone who didn't need her anymore? But what if he hadn't? What if there was still time? She turned in a direction that wasn't safe, wasn't certain. Her paws shaking over ground she once knew by heart. Every rock felt unfamiliar, every shadow a question. But she moved anyway, not out of hope. Not yet, but out of something deeper than fear, a need to know, a need to see. And when she caught the scent again, faint, but real. Her body moved before her mind caught up. Not a sprint, not a hunt. Something else. Something fragile and wild and driven by love. She didn't know what she'd find, but the silence inside her had cracked, and from that crack, something warm began to rise, slow, unsure, but alive. The cage opened with a low click, lost almost instantly in the wind, and for a long breath, nothing moved. The mountain waited, the sky pale and still, and then she stepped forward slow, every limb deliberate, her ears turning to sounds long forgotten, her nose lifting to air. She once knew her body thinner, her gait slower, but her eyes sharp, searching. And then another shape appeared behind her, smaller, stronger but hesitant, his paws pressed against stone, unfamiliar eyes, darting toward the vast white stretch, and then toward her, the silence between them held like ice, unbroken, fragile. She turned just slightly, not fully, not yet, and he froze as if sensing something old, something buried rise between them. Their eyes met, not in drama, not in sound, but in stillness. She took a step. He didn't run instead. He watched her the way he had once watched her hunt, and in that gaze, something ancient sparked. He moved forward slow, one step, then another. The snow gave beneath them as they came closer. Not touching, not rushing, just circling the space between them, like planets pulled by gravity. And then she lowered her head, and he blinked slow, and the breath that left them both was one they had held for years. The world around them blurred. The wind fell away, and for a heartbeat there was only them. The same rhythm, the same silence. And in that silence, recognition flared. Not loud, not sudden, but deep and certain, as if their bodies remembered what the years had tried to erase. And just like that, the distance was gone. Not with a cry, not with a leap, but with a look that said, I know you. I never stopped knowing you. At first they moved like strangers, not out of fear but caution, relearning each other's shape in the snow. She watched him from a distance, letting him lead, letting him test the wind on his own, yet always close, always in the corner of his eye. And he glanced back often, more than he needed, as if to make sure she was still real. One morning he brushed past her flank without fear, and she did not move away that night. They lay side by side beneath the stars, not curled tight, but near enough to share warmth and stillness. And that was the beginning. In the days that followed, they hunted again, not as teacher and cub, but as two who remembered how to move as one. He paused before pouncing and waited for her signal. She let him take the lead, then joined without sound. She no longer searched the wind for what was missing, and he no longer woke with eyes wide from dreams of pain. Sometimes he nudged her playfully, a small shove, a flick of the tail, and sometimes she responded not with sound, but a gentle press of her body, a look, a breath. And slowly, what was broken didn't vanish but became something else. Not absence but memory, not grief but thread between them. And though they never spoke, and the mountains never told their story, those who watched knew that something rare had been rebuilt, not in a moment, but in 1,000 silent steps, because love had not ended. It had only waited, and now that it had returned, it asked for nothing but this, to walk together, to breathe together, to remember together. And in that quiet, there was life again. Some bonds don't need sound or explanation. They live beneath the surface where memory becomes instinct and time bends around feeling they survive. Distance, silence, even forgetting. And when they return, they do so. Not with noise, but with stillness, a breath, a glance, a step taken side by side. She is no longer just a mother. He is no longer just a cub. They are something more, shaped by loss, made whole again, not by what was said, but by what was never broken. And in the hush of the mountains, where only wind listens, they move forward, not to reclaim the past, but to carry it quietly within them. Because true connection doesn't vanish. It waits patiently until the moment it is needed most. And then, without asking for permission, it heals.